The smell of burned coffee was the first sign that something was terribly wrong. Jessa Crane opened her eyes and saw a ceiling that definitely wasn't hers. Concrete gray, exposed beams, the kind of minimalist design that screamed, "I make 6 figures and have no time for decorating." She blinked 3 times, hoping reality would reorganize itself. It didn't work. That's when she saw the ring, a simple platinum band, almost masculine on her left ring finger. Jessa sat up in bed so fast her head spun, and that's when she noticed 3 things. First, she was wearing an oversized men's t-shirt. Second, there were jeans and a dress shirt thrown on the floor like they'd been torn off in a hurry. Third, from the other side of the massive loft came the sound of someone talking on the phone with that "I'll fire you before lunch" tone she knew very well, because it was her boss's tone. "No, Marcus, you'll present the numbers correctly, or you'll update your LinkedIn." Garrett Stone's voice cut through the air. "Meeting at 9. No excuses." Jessa looked at the digital clock on the nightstand. 8:47. Mondays were already a nightmare, but waking up at her boss's place with a wedding ring on her finger in less than 15 minutes to what, exactly? "You're awake. Great." Garrett appeared in the bedroom doorway, impeccable in a charcoal suit, holding 2 coffee mugs. He had that irritatingly perfect appearance that made the interns at Stone Digital suspiciously quiet whenever he walked by. Dark brown hair combed back, sharp jawline, and those eyes that seemed to calculate your market value while greeting you. "We have 19 minutes to get to the office. Wear this." He tossed a navy blue dress still with the tag on the bed. "Wait." Jessa raised her left hand, making the ring gleam under the Seattle morning light. "You're going to explain?" "In the car." Garrett checked his watch. 18 minutes. "Garrett, I have a ring on my finger, a wedding ring, and I have a meeting with Japanese investors who woke up at 5 in the morning their time to hear our proposal." He took a sip of his own coffee, impassive. "Priorities, Crane." Jessa let out a hysterical laugh. Of course she'd married the only man in Seattle who would treat an accidental marriage as a second priority item on a to-do list. "I don't remember anything," she said, running her hand through her auburn hair that certainly looked like it had been styled by a tornado. "Saturday night there was the company happy hour. Then we went to that ridiculous karaoke place you hated." "I didn't hate it. I questioned the need to sing Bohemian Rhapsody out loud while spending the quarterly team-building budget. And then, nothing. Absolutely nothing." Jessa squinted. "Why aren't you freaking out?" Garrett set his coffee mug on the dresser and crossed his arms. For a second, something passed across his face. Fatigue, maybe, or the closest thing to embarrassment that a man like Garrett Stone could show. "Because I remember," he said, "and because we have 17 minutes. You remember, and you're not put on the dress now." He was already leaving the room. "And Jessa, technically you asked for time off yesterday saying you were exhausted from corporate life and needed a break to reevaluate your choices. I said you were too valuable to lose. You replied that the only way you'd stay at the company was if I gave you a permanent reason." He stopped at the door, turning only his face. "Apparently, marry me seemed like a logical solution at 3 in the morning, for both of us." The door closed. Jessa stared at the empty space for a full 5 seconds before grabbing the dress. It was the right size. Of course it was. Garrett Stone didn't make mistakes even when drunk. While changing clothes on autopilot, fragments of the night started coming back. Garrett trying and failing to sing Johnny Cash, her laughing so hard she cried, the two of them walking through the empty Pike Place market at 2 in the morning, him saying something about creative solutions for talent retention, and then, at a 24-hour chapel that apparently existed in Seattle. "You've got to be kidding me," Jessa whispered to her own reflection in the mirror. The dress fit perfectly. "I married my boss. Technically," Garrett's voice came from the hallway, "I married my best data analyst, which makes this an excellent corporate investment." She opened the door and found him waiting with her purse, which she now realized he'd retrieved from her apartment at some point during the early morning. "We have 12 minutes, he said, offering his arm with that minimal smile he used when he was about to close an impossible deal. "Come on, Mrs. Stone. We have a company to run." Jessa looked at the offered arm, at the ring that matched hers on Garrett's finger, at those slate-gray eyes that were famous for never losing a negotiation. "Did you plan this?" she asked. "I never plan to get drunk married at 3 in the morning." He checked his watch again. But now that it's happened, I intend to make this the most strategic decision we've ever made. It's a marriage, not a corporate merger. Garrett smiled. A real smile this time, not the business meeting kind. Wife, he said, making the words sound like both promise and challenge. In my experience, the best marriages work exactly like successful mergers. Two strong assets joining forces to dominate the market. Romantic, Jessa muttered, but took his arm. As they descended in the private elevator, she noticed two things. First, the dress had a cut that made her look like she'd stepped out of a business magazine. Second, Garrett still smelled of that impossible-to-ignore cologne that had been distracting her in meetings for months. "When are you going to tell me exactly what happened yesterday?" she asked as they entered the garage. Garrett unlocked a black Tesla that probably cost more than her apartment. "After the meeting," he said, opening the door for her. "The Japanese can't know I got married yesterday. Professionalism. You're wearing a wedding ring. They'll assume I've been married for years. Increases credibility." He got in the car and started the ignition. "You, on the other hand, are going to cause a small problem." "Me?" Garrett looked at her as he pulled out of the garage, and there was something new in that look. Something that made Jessa's stomach do a little flip. "Everyone at the office knows you're single, Crane, and now you're wearing a ring." He turned his eyes back to the road. "People are going to talk, so we take off the rings." "No." The firmness in his voice made Jessa turn completely toward Garrett. "No. We did this drunk, yes. Impulsively, for sure." Garrett stopped at a red light and finally looked at her again. "But it wasn't a mistake, Jessa, and I'm not going to treat it like one." The light turned green. He accelerated, and Jessa Crane realized she'd woken up not just married, but apparently married to a man who took even accidental marriages with the same competitive seriousness he took corporate acquisitions. "We're going to talk about this," she said, trying to sound firm. "Yes, we will." Garrett parked in his spot marked CEO G. Stone. "After we closed the $15 million deal with Takahashi Industries." He got out, walked around, and opened her door like a perfect gentleman. "Ready, Mrs. Stone?" Jessa looked at the Stone Digital building, where she'd worked for the past 3 years, where she had her own office on the 22nd floor, where she had colleagues who were absolutely going to lose their minds when they saw that ring. "You really do have a plan, don't you?" she asked. Garrett offered his hand to help her out of the car. When his fingers touched hers, something passed between them. Electricity, recognition, or maybe just the memory of a night she desperately needed to remember. "I always have a plan," he said. "But to be honest, this one includes some variables I've never considered before." "Like?" He didn't let go of her hand. "Like the fact that, for the first time in 10 years of my career, I made a decision based completely on instinct." Garrett interlaced his fingers with hers. "And that I woke up this morning, looked at you sleeping in my bed, and thought that maybe my instinct was right." Before Jessa could respond, his phone buzzed. "Marcus," he said, instantly switching back to CEO mode. "The Japanese arrived early. Let's go." And so, holding the hand of the man she'd apparently married less than 12 hours ago, Jessa Crane walked into the office prepared for what would probably be the most insane Monday of her life. In the elevator, Garrett pressed the button for the 25th floor, the executive conference room, and whispered, "And Jessa, no matter what happens today, remember, you asked for that time off. Technically, you're now working on your day off." She looked at him incredulous. "You're making me work the day after our wedding." Garrett smiled that minimalist smile of his. "Welcome to corporate matrimony, wife. Now let's go make 15 million. The elevator doors opened. The elevator doors opened to reveal the 25th floor in all its glass and chrome glory. Jessa had exactly 3 seconds to mentally prepare before she saw them. The entire executive team already assembled in the conference room, visible through the transparent walls, and every single one of them turned to look as she and Garrett stepped out of the elevator, still holding hands. "Release strategy," Garrett murmured without breaking stride. "We walk in confident. No explanations unless directly asked. And if anyone asks, it's personal and we're keeping it professional," Jessa suggested. "Exactly." He squeezed her hand once, then let go as they approached the conference room door. "Follow my lead." The moment they entered, the temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Marcus Chen, the CFO, was mid-sip of his coffee and nearly choked. Valerie Rodriguez, head of marketing, dropped her pen. and Todd Brennan, the VP of Operations, just stared with his mouth literally hanging open. "Good morning, everyone," Garrett said smoothly, taking his seat at the head of the table. "Apologies for the slight delay. Traffic on 5th was a disaster." There was no traffic. Everyone knew there was no traffic. It was 8:58 on a Monday morning in downtown Seattle. Jessa slid into her usual seat, 3 chairs down from Garrett between Marcus and Valerie, and opened her laptop like this was any other Monday meeting, except Valerie was staring at her left hand. "Is that?" Valerie started, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Takahashi team should be here any moment," Garrett continued, completely ignoring the elephant in the room. "Marcus, are the revised projections ready?" Marcus was still staring at Jessa, or more specifically, at her ring finger. "Marcus," Garrett's voice sharpened slightly. "Projections?" Yes, they're ready." Marcus fumbled with his tablet, but his eyes kept darting between Jessa and Garrett. "Revenue growth of 32% year-over-year, margin improvements in Q3 and Q4. Jessa," Garrett interrupted. "The data integration timeline?" This was a test. Jessa could feel it. Garrett was giving her the floor, making her speak, forcing everyone to acknowledge her presence and authority before the gossip could undermine either. Smart, ruthless, totally him. "Integration completes in 6 weeks, Jessa said, her voice steady despite the fact that 3 executives were openly gaping at her ring. "We've already migrated 40% of their legacy systems. The remaining 60% runs parallel for 2 weeks. Then we flip the switch. 0 downtime, 0 data loss." "And if they ask about security?" Garrett prompted. "Bank-grade encryption, multi-factor authentication, and we're already compliant with both Japanese and U.S. data protection regulations." Jessa met his eyes across the table. "They'll have access to real-time analytics within 72 hours of signing." Garrett nodded, and something warm flickered in his expression. Pride, maybe, or approval, before he turned back to Marcus. "Cost analysis?" But before Marcus could answer, Todd finally found his voice. "Are you two... is that..." He gestured vaguely at Jessa's hand. "Are you wearing matching rings?" The room went silent. Jessa felt her face heat up, but before she could respond, the conference room door opened and Garrett's assistant, Kim, stuck her head in. "Mr. Stone, the Takahashi delegation is here." Perfect timing. Garrett stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "Everyone, game faces. We're about to close the biggest deal in company history. Personal matters can wait until after we've secured $15 million. Agreed?" It wasn't really a question. The team nodded mutely, but Jessa caught Valerie mouthing, "What?" at her as they all stood. The next 90 minutes were possibly the most surreal of Jessa's professional life. On one level, she was completely in her element, presenting data, answering technical questions, explaining integration timelines with the kind of confidence that came from knowing she was the best at what she did. The Takahashi team was impressed. She could see it in the way they leaned forward when she spoke, the way their lead negotiator, Mr. Yamamoto, nodded approvingly at her projections. But on another level, she was acutely aware of Garrett's presence beside her at the head of the table, the way he occasionally brushed her elbow when making a point, the way he said "my team," but his eyes lingered on her, the way he smiled, really smiled, not that corporate mask, when she successfully fielded a particularly tricky question about data redundancy, and the way every single person from Stone Digital was watching them, with expressions ranging from confusion to shock to barely suppressed glee. "Mrs. Crane," Mr. Yamamoto said at one point, and Jessa felt her stomach drop. "Actually, it's Ms. Crane," she corrected automatically. "Ah, my apologies." Mr. Yamamoto inclined his head. "The ring, I assumed, recent development," Garrett interjected smoothly. "We're still getting used to it ourselves." The silence that followed that statement was deafening, but Mr. Yamamoto, bless him, simply smiled and moved on to the next question about server architecture. By the time they wrapped up the meeting, with Takahashi Industries verbally committing to the deal and promising signed contracts by end of week, Jessa felt like she'd run a marathon where everyone was staring at her the entire time. The Takahashi team filed out, all handshakes and bows and promises to celebrate properly once the contracts were signed. The moment the door closed behind them, chaos erupted. "Okay, what?" Valerie practically shouted. "Garrett, Jessa, what is happening right now? Are you two dating? Todd demanded. How long has this been going on? Marcus added. That's a wedding ring, Valerie continued, pointing at Jessa's hand like it was evidence in a murder trial. That's definitely a wedding ring. I've been married twice, I know wedding rings. Garrett remained standing, his hands in his pockets, looking remarkably calm for someone whose entire executive team was currently losing their minds. Jessa and I got married this weekend, he said simply. The room exploded. What? You're married? Since when? This weekend? Like 2 days ago? How is that even possible? Garrett waited for the noise to die down, which took approximately 30 seconds of overlapping shouting. We've known each other for 3 years, he said once they'd quieted. We work well together. We decided to make it official. I don't see how this is anyone's business but ours. You got married and didn't tell anyone. Valerie looked personally offended. Garrett, we're your leadership team. It was a private ceremony, Jessa heard herself say. All eyes swung to her. Very small. Just the two of us. This was technically true, just extremely misleading about the circumstances. But, Marcus was shaking his head. You two never even seemed like you were dating. There were no signs, no office gossip, nothing. We kept it professional, Garrett said. Still plan to. Professional? Todd let out a disbelieving laugh. Dude, you married your employee. That's like the opposite of professional. Garrett's expression hardened. Jessa is not my employee. She's a department head. She reports to the COO, not to me. There's no direct reporting relationship, which makes this completely within company policy. Technically true, Marcus admitted. But Garrett, come on. This is going to cause problems. What problems? Garrett's voice had gone cold. Jessa is the best data analyst this company has. She earned her position through merit. Nothing about our relationship changes her qualifications or her performance. If anyone has an issue with that, they can discuss it with HR. The room went silent again, but this time it felt different, heavier. Valerie was the first to break it, and to Jessa's surprise, she was smiling. Okay, look, this is weird. This is super weird. Valerie looked between them, but also, kind of amazing. Garrett, I've worked with you for 6 years and I've never seen you smile the way you smiled at Jessa during that presentation. So if you're happy and Jessa's happy, then congratulations. Thank you, Jessa said quietly, meaning it. But, Valerie continued, her smile turning mischievous, you both better expect approximately 1 million questions when we go out for drinks later. Because this is the most interesting thing to happen at this company since Todd accidentally sent that email about his fantasy football league to all 500 employees. That was one time, Todd protested, but he was grinning. And yeah, I have so many questions. Starting with how did this even happen? Did you propose, Garrett? Did Jessa propose? Was there a proposal? There was a proposal, Garrett said, and Jessa felt him glance at her. At 3 in the morning, actually. Romantic, Marcus said dryly. It was spontaneous, Jessa added, trying not to think about the fact that she didn't actually remember said proposal. Very us. Well, I need details, Valerie declared. But first I need to tell everyone in marketing because they're going to lose their minds. The Ice King got married, and nobody knew he was even dating someone. Please don't call me that, Garrett said tiredly. Sorry, but you know that's what people call you, right? Valerie was already pulling out her phone. The Ice King, Mr. Freeze, the Terminator. You have multiple nicknames, none of them warm and fuzzy. I'm aware, Garrett said, and I'd appreciate it if the news was shared with some discretion. Valerie snorted. Discretion? Garrett, you married the most popular person in the company. Jessa throws office birthday parties. Jessa remembers everyone's coffee orders. Jessa organized the Secret Santa last year that actually worked. Everyone loves Jessa. I wouldn't say everyone, Jessa started. Everyone, Valerie repeated firmly, which means everyone is going to have opinions about this, strong opinions. So buckle up, you two, because this is going to be a ride. As if on cue, there was a knock on the conference room door. Kim poked her head in again, her eyes wide. Mr. Stone, sorry to interrupt, but there are about 15 people from the development team outside asking if it's true that you and Jessa got married, and I didn't know what to tell them, so I said I'd check. And now they're all just standing there waiting. It's true, Garrett said simply. You can tell them. Kim's mouth fell open. It's... Really? You actually... Yes. Now, if you'll excuse us, Jessa and I have work to do. He walked to the door, and Jessa followed, very aware of 4 executive stares burning into her back. The moment they stepped into the hallway, a small crowd turned to look at them, and then someone started clapping, then someone else. Then the entire group was applauding, and someone wolf whistled, and Jessa felt her face turn bright red as Garrett took her hand again. "Thank you," he said to the crowd, his voice carrying that natural authority that made people listen. "Now everyone back to work. We have a company to run." The crowd dispersed, still buzzing with excitement, and Garrett led Jessa toward the elevator. "That went better than expected," he murmured as they stepped inside. "They applauded," Jessa said in disbelief. "Your employees applauded our accidental marriage." "Our strategic marriage," Garrett corrected as the doors closed. "And they applauded because they like you. Valerie was right. You are the most popular person here, and you're the Ice King. I'm aware." He smiled at her reflection in the elevator's mirrored wall. "Good thing I married someone warm enough to balance me out." The elevator descended, and Jessa watched their reflections. Her in the navy dress that fit perfectly, him in his charcoal suit, both wearing matching platinum bands. They looked like a couple, a real couple. "Garrett," she said slowly, "what happens now?" "Now?" He turned to face her fully. "Now we go to your office, close the door, and I tell you exactly what happened Saturday night. Every detail, because you deserve to know what you agreed to when you said yes to me at 3 in the morning." The elevator doors opened onto the 22nd floor. "And then," Garrett continued, taking her hand again, "we figure out if we want to stay married. Together." Jessa's heart skipped. "Together?" "Together," Garrett confirmed. "Because I meant what I said in the car, Jessa. This wasn't a mistake, and I don't make business decisions lightly, especially not ones involving the rest of my life." He smiled at her, and it was that real smile again, the one that made him look 10 years younger and infinitely more dangerous to her heart. "So what do you say, Mrs. Stone? Ready to hear the story of how we accidentally became the best decision either of us ever made?" Jessa looked at their joined hands, at the matching rings, at the man who'd somehow convinced her drunk self to marry him, and was now looking at her like she was the most valuable acquisition his company had ever made. "Yeah," she heard herself say, "I'm ready." Jessa's office was smaller than Garrett's. Everyone's office was smaller than Garrett's, but it had something his didn't. Windows that actually opened, plants that were somehow still alive, and a couch that didn't look like it came from a minimalist design catalog. Garrett closed the door behind them and immediately loosened his tie. "Your office is more comfortable than mine," he observed, settling onto the couch like he'd done it 100 times before. He hadn't. Garrett Stone didn't visit employee offices. He summoned people to his. "That's because I actually use my office for things other than intimidating people," Jessa said, dropping her purse on the desk. Her heart was hammering. "Okay, tell me. Everything." Garrett patted the seat next to him. "Sit. This is gonna take a while." Jessa sat, maintaining a careful 6 inches of distance between them. The couch suddenly felt very small. "Saturday night," Garrett began. "Started normally enough. Company happy hour at the Fisherman's Catch. You were wearing that green dress that makes your eyes look—" He stopped himself. "You wore a green dress." "I remember that part," Jessa said. "I also remember you showing up in jeans. Actual jeans. People were taking pictures." "I came from the gym," Garrett said defensively. "I didn't plan to stay long. But then Marcus challenged me to a darts game, and Todd kept ordering rounds. And you—" He paused. "You were laughing at something Valerie said. Really laughing, and I realized I'd never really heard you laugh like that before." Jessa's breath caught. "Garrett, let me finish," he said quietly, "because this is the part I need you to understand. I've known you for 3 years, Jessa. 3 years of watching you fix impossible problems, mediate office conflicts, remember everyone's birthdays, and somehow make data analysis look exciting in presentations. And in those 3 years, I convinced myself that what I felt was just professional admiration." "Was it?" Jessa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "No." Garrett's gray eyes met hers. "It wasn't. But I'm your boss's boss. I'm 12 years older than you. I have a reputation for being cold and calculating, so I kept my distance and told myself it was appropriate. Until Saturday night. Until Saturday night, Garrett confirmed. When you challenged me to karaoke, Jessa groaned. I didn't. You did. You said, and I quote, I bet the Ice King doesn't even know the words to any songs made after 1990. That sounds like drunk me, Jessa admitted. Drunk me has terrible ideas. Drunk you had the best idea, Garrett countered. Because I took the bet and we ended up singing, badly singing, Bohemian Rhapsody as a duet. You did Freddie Mercury's parts. I did the guitar solos with air guitar. Jessa covered her face with her hands. No. There's video, Garrett said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. Todd posted it to the company Slack. It has 473 views. I'm never going back to work. You already went back to work. You closed a $15 million deal while wearing a ring that says you married me. Garrett gently pulled her hands away from her face. After karaoke, everyone started heading home. But you said you weren't ready for the night to end. So I suggested we walk. Walk where? Nowhere in particular, everywhere. Garrett's thumb was absently tracing circles on her wrist, and Jessa wasn't sure he even realized he was doing it. We ended up at Pike Place Market. It was closed, obviously, but the streets were empty and quiet, and you started talking about why you moved to Seattle, about your family in Minnesota, about how you almost took a job in Silicon Valley but chose here instead, because you wanted seasons and coffee culture and the ocean. I told you all that? Jessa tried to remember. She had vague impressions, streetlights, Garrett's laugh, the smell of salt water, but no clear memories. You did. And I told you things I've never told anyone at work. About how I started this company in my apartment with maxed out credit cards. About my sister who thinks I work too much. About how sometimes I look around at what I've built and wonder if it's enough. Is it? Jessa asked softly. I didn't think so. Not until Saturday night. Garrett's expression turned serious. We walked for hours, Jessa, and at some point around 2 in the morning we were sitting on a bench by the waterfront, and you said something that changed everything. What did I say? You said, you know what's funny? Everyone at work thinks you're this untouchable robot, but you're actually just scared. Scared that if you let anyone see the real you, they'll realize you're just as human as the rest of us. Jessa winced. I said that out loud, to your face? You did, and you were right. Garrett shifted closer, closing some of that 6-inch gap. And then you said, for what it's worth, I like the human version better, even if he does need to learn how to delegate. Drunk me has no filter. Drunk you is honest and brave, and she looked at me and said, why don't we ever do anything about this? Jessa's heart stopped. About what? The thing between us. The tension. The way we look at each other in meetings when we think no one's watching. Garrett's voice dropped lower. I told you it was complicated. You said life is complicated. I said it would be inappropriate. You said we're both adults who can make our own choices. And then? Jessa could barely breathe. And then you asked me what I wanted. Not what was appropriate, not what made sense, not what followed company policy, what I actually wanted. Garrett reached up and tucked a strand of her auburn hair behind her ear, and I realized I'd never let myself answer that question before. Not honestly. What did you say? I said I wanted you, not as an employee, not as a colleague, just you. His hand lingered near her face, and you smiled, this beautiful, brilliant smile, and you said, well, that's convenient because I've wanted you since approximately my 3rd week here, when you shut down that meeting with the board by reciting 2 years of financial data from memory. Jessa laughed despite herself. That actually happened. You demolished them. You thought that was attractive? I thought you were terrifying and impressive in equal measure. Still do, honestly. Garrett smiled, and it was that real smile again, the one that transformed his entire face. So we sat on that bench, and we talked about what it would mean, dating in secret, navigating the power dynamics, whether it could even work. And we decided to get married instead? Jessa asked incredulously. That's not a logical progression, Garrett. No. We decided to get married because you asked me a question. Garrett's expression turned vulnerable in a way Jessa had never seen before. You asked, if you knew for certain that I was the right choice, not the safe choice, not the logical choice, but the right choice, would you still hesitate? And I realized the answer was no. I wouldn't hesitate at all. So you proposed. So I proposed. At 3 in the morning, sitting on a bench by the water with no ring and no plan. I just said, marry me. Not someday, not eventually, now, tonight, before we can talk ourselves out of it. And I said yes. It wasn't a question. You said yes, and then you said, this is either the best or worst decision we've ever made, and honestly, I don't care which. Garrett laughed softly. Very you, even drunk. So we found a chapel. We found a chapel. The Eternal Love Wedding Chapel. Open 24 hours, cash only. They had a package deal that included rings, flowers, and a photographer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Do we have pictures? Jessa asked, half dreading the answer. We have pictures. Garrett pulled out his phone, swiped a few times, and handed it to her. We have a lot of pictures. Jessa looked at the screen and felt her breath catch. There she was in her green dress, holding a bouquet of grocery store roses, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. And there was Garrett in his jeans and button-down, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. His hand was on her cheek in one photo. She was laughing mid-kiss in another. In a third, they were signing the marriage certificate, both wearing matching expressions of delighted disbelief. They looked happy, ridiculously, impossibly happy. Jessa couldn't finish the sentence. Like we made the right choice? Garrett supplied gently. Jessa scrolled through more photos. There was one where Garrett was dipping her dramatically, both of them cracking up. Another where she was adjusting his collar while he looked down at her with unmistakable affection. And one at the very end where they were just standing together, foreheads touching, eyes closed. Why don't I remember this? Jessa whispered. This looks perfect. This looks like something I'd want to remember forever. You had 4 espresso martinis on an empty stomach, Garrett said wryly. I'm honestly impressed you stayed conscious through the ceremony. How much did you have? Enough to propose. Not enough to forget? He paused. I'm sorry you don't remember. But I remember enough for both of us. Jessa looked up from the phone, and Garrett was closer now, close enough that she could see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes, close enough to smell that cologne that had been driving her crazy all morning. So what happens now? She asked. We got drunk married, we told the office, we closed the deal. What's next in your strategic plan? I don't have a strategic plan, Garrett admitted. For the first time in my adult life, I'm making this up as I go. But I know what I want. What do you want? I want to take you to dinner, not a business dinner, not a company event, an actual date where we talk about things that have nothing to do with quarterly projections or data integration. We're already married, Jessa pointed out. Isn't dating backwards? Everything about this is backwards, Garrett agreed. But I don't care. I want to do this right, Jessa. I want to court my own wife. I want to learn what movies make you cry and what you order at restaurants and what you do on Sunday mornings. I want all the things I skipped by accident. Jessa's heart was doing something complicated in her chest. And if I say yes to dinner, then we see what happens. We take it one day at a time. We figure out if drunk us made a decision that sober us can live with. Garrett's hand found hers, fingers interlacing naturally. And if at any point you decide this isn't what you want, if you want to undo what we did, I'll understand. We'll get it annulled. We'll keep it quiet. We'll go back to being professional colleagues. Do you want that? Jessa asked. No. I want you to wear that ring and mean it. I want to take you home to my apartment, our apartment technically, and not have it be because you're too drunk to remember your address. I want to wake up next to you and have you actually remember the night before. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. But I want you to want that too. Consciously, soberly, completely. Jessa looked at their joined hands, at the matching platinum bands, at this man who'd apparently seen something in her 3 years ago and had been patient enough to wait until she saw it too. I have a question, she said finally. Anything. When you proposed, drunk proposal at 3 in the morning notwithstanding, did you mean it? Not the impulsive part, but the actual feeling behind it? Garrett was quiet for a long moment. Then he lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, just above the ring. I've never meant anything more in my life, he said simply. Drunk Garrett just had the courage to say what sober Garrett has been thinking for months. What has sober Garrett been thinking? That Jessa Crane is brilliant and funny and kind, and the only person in the world who can make me forget about profit margins and quarterly reports. That she's been the best part of my workday for longer than I want to admit. And that maybe, just maybe, she feels the same way. Jessa's breath hitched. She does. Yeah? Yeah. Jessa squeezed his hand. I've had a crush on my boss for 2 years, apparently. which feels very cliché, but there it is. I'm not your boss. No, you're my husband, which is somehow less cliché. She laughed, slightly hysterical. Garrett, we're married. We're actually married. That's insane. Completely insane. Garrett agreed. Want to stay married anyway? It should have been a harder question. It should have required thought, consideration, maybe a pros and cons list. But Jessa looked at Garrett Stone, the Ice King himself, looking at her like she was the sun and he'd been cold his entire life. And the answer was obvious. Yeah, she said. I really do. Garrett's smile could have powered the entire building. Good, because I already moved some of your things from your apartment to mine. Jessa's jaw dropped. You what? This morning while you were sleeping, I grabbed your toothbrush, some clothes, your laptop, that plant you're always worried about. He looked sheepish. I may have overstepped. You moved my plant? It's a nice plant. It deserves to live in natural light. Jessa started laughing, and once she started, she couldn't stop. This was ridiculous. This was the most ridiculous thing that had ever happened to her. She'd gotten drunk married to her boss's boss, didn't remember the ceremony, and now he was telling her he'd relocated her houseplants. You're insane, she managed between laughs. I'm efficient, Garrett corrected, but he was grinning too. And I'm taking you to dinner tonight, somewhere expensive where they won't rush us, and then I'm taking you home and showing you where I put all your things. And then, if you're amenable, I'm kissing you until you make new memories that you actually remember. Jessa's laughter died in her throat. That's quite a plan. I'm good at plans, Garrett murmured, leaning closer. May I? It took Jessa a moment to realize what he was asking. When she did, her heart did that complicated thing again. Yes, she whispered. Garrett kissed her softly, carefully, like she was something precious he was afraid to break. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone, and Jessa felt the world narrow down to this. His lips on hers, his breath mingling with hers, the steady thrum of her heartbeat saying yes, yes, yes. When they pulled apart, Garrett rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that for a very long time, he admitted. How long? Since the day you wore that blue sweater and corrected my data analysis in front of the entire board meeting. Jessa laughed. That was 18 months ago. I know. He kissed her again, quick and sweet. I'm a patient man, Jessa. When I want something, I wait for the right moment. Was 3 in the morning in front of a sketchy wedding chapel the right moment? It was perfect, Garrett said seriously. Because it was honest. No corporate politics, no power dynamics, just two people who wanted each other enough to do something completely reckless. We're going to get so much gossip, Jessa said. Let them talk. Garrett stood, pulling her up with him. Come on, we have a company to run, a deal to finalize, and approximately 6 more hours before I can take my wife to dinner. Your wife, Jessa repeated, testing the words. That's so weird. Good weird or bad weird? Jessa looked at him, really looked at him. Garrett Stone, CEO, notorious workaholic, the man everyone called the Ice King, her husband. Good weird, she decided. Definitely good weird. Garrett's answering smile was worth every confused memory, every moment of chaos, every shocked face in the office. One more thing, he said as they reached the door. Tonight at dinner, I'm going to ask you properly. Ask me what? To marry me. With a real proposal, not a drunk one at 3 in the morning, and a ring that I actually choose. Not one from a 24-hour wedding chapel. He touched her face again, gentle. Because you deserve that, Jessa. You deserve someone asking you the most important question of your life when you're sober enough to remember the answer. Jessa felt tears prick her eyes. You're really romantic when you're not being a CEO. Only for you, Garrett said. Only ever for you. He opened the door, and they stepped back into the hallway where their employees were undoubtedly still gossiping about the scandal of the century. But Jessa didn't care, because she was holding hands with her husband, wearing a ring that meant something real, and for the first time since waking up that morning, she felt like everything was exactly where it should be. Mrs. Stone? Garrett said as they walked toward the elevators. Yes, Mr. Stone? I'm really glad you're a terrible drunk decision-maker. Jessa laughed. Me too, me too. The rest of Monday passed in a blur of knowing looks, whispered conversations that stopped when Jessa walked by, and at least 7 different people asking if they could see her ring up close. By 5 o'clock, Jessa was exhausted from smiling and saying thank you, and deflecting questions about when they started dating with vague answers about keeping it private. She was packing up her laptop when Valerie appeared in her doorway, arms crossed and wearing an expression that Jessa had learned to recognize as, "We need to talk now." "Conference room. Just us," Valerie said. "I ordered Thai food. You're going to tell me everything, and I mean everything, or I'm posting the karaoke video to every social media platform we have." "You wouldn't. Try me." But Valerie was smiling. "Come on, I brought wine." 20 minutes later, Jessa was curled up in a conference room chair with pad thai and a glass of Pinot Grigio, while Valerie listened to the entire story with increasingly wide eyes. "So, let me get this straight," Valerie said when Jessa finished. "You and Garrett have been mutually pining for each other for months, got drunk, decided to get married at 3 in the morning, and now he's moving your stuff into his penthouse and planning to propose again properly." "That's accurate, yes. That's the most romantic thing I've ever heard." Valerie pointed her fork at Jessa. "Also the most insane, but mostly romantic." "You think it's romantic, not reckless?" "Jessa, I've been married twice. Once to my college boyfriend because it seemed like the logical next step, and once to a guy I dated for 4 years because everyone said we were perfect together." Valerie took a sip of wine. "Both times, I knew exactly what I was doing, had a plan, followed all the rules. And both times, it didn't work. So honestly, your way sounds better. My way is chaos. Your way is honest," Valerie corrected. "You didn't overthink it. You didn't make a pros and cons list. You just said yes to something that felt right. That takes guts. Or 4 espresso martinis. Or both." Valerie grinned. "So where's he taking you tonight?" "I don't know. He just said somewhere expensive where they won't rush us. He's going to propose. Again. Properly." Valerie looked delighted. "You need to change. What are you wearing?" Jessa looked down at the navy dress Garrett had bought her. "This? Absolutely not. You wore that to close a business deal. You need something that says I'm your wife and I'm spectacular." Valerie was already pulling out her phone. "What size are you?" "6, but Valerie..." "Perfect. I'm a 6. And I have the perfect dress in my car because I was supposed to have drinks with a guy from marketing who totally stood me up. So his loss is your gain." She was typing rapidly. "I'm texting Kim to have her sneak it up here. You're changing before Garrett picks you up." "He's not picking me up. I can just meet him." "Jessa." Valerie looked scandalized. "This is your first date with your husband. He is absolutely picking you up. From your office, in front of everyone. Because that man needs to show everyone that he's not the Ice King anymore, and you need to let him." Jessa wanted to argue, but Valerie had a point. "Fine. But if this dress is inappropriate..." "It's perfect, trust me." Valerie's phone buzzed. "Kim's on her way up. Now tell me more about these wedding photos. Are we talking cute or gorgeous?" "Gorgeous," Jessa admitted. "We look really happy." "Because you are really happy," Valerie said firmly. "I saw the way you two looked at each other in that meeting this morning. That wasn't fake. That wasn't for show. That was real." "How do you know?" "Because I've been watching Garrett watch you for 6 months now, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Like you're the solution to every problem he's ever had." Valerie smiled. "And you look at him the same way." Before Jessa could respond, Kim knocked and entered with a garment bag. "Valerie said this is a romantic emergency," Kim said, looking thrilled to be included. "Also, everyone downstairs is betting on whether Mr. Stone will pick you up himself or send his driver." "He doesn't have a driver," Jessa said. "Exactly." Kim handed over the garment bag with a flourish. "My money's on him picking you up personally, in front of everyone, at exactly 6 o'clock. It was 5:47. "You two are ridiculous," Jessa said, but she was already unzipping the bag. The dress was burgundy, sophisticated but not overly formal, with a neckline that was professional enough for the office, but interesting enough for a date. It was perfect. "Bathroom, now! Go!" Valerie made shooing motions. "Kim and I will stand guard." 5 minutes later, Jessa emerged to find Valerie and Kim both staring at their phones. "He just left his office," Kim reported. "He's in the elevator." "Lipstick," Valerie ordered, producing a tube from her purse. "This color is perfect with that dress. How did you even..." "I have 3 teenagers and an ex-husband who never helped with anything. I learned to plan for chaos." Valerie applied the lipstick with professional efficiency. "There, you look stunning." Jessa caught her reflection in the conference room windows. She did look good. The dress fit like it was tailored for her. The color made her auburn hair look richer, and there was something in her expression, excitement maybe, or anticipation, that made her look different, alive. "He's on this floor," Kim whispered, checking her phone. 3, 2, 1. There was a knock on the conference room door. Jessa's heart stopped. Valerie and Kim both scrambled to look busy, which was hilarious since they were very obviously not busy. "Come in," Jessa called, trying to sound casual. Garrett opened the door and stopped. Just stopped. His eyes swept over her, and something flickered in his expression. Surprise, appreciation, heat, before settling into that soft smile she was beginning to recognize as the real one, not the corporate one. "Hi," he said. "Hi," Jessa replied. They stared at each other for a beat too long, and Valerie cleared her throat loudly. "Right, leaving. We're leaving." She grabbed Kim's arm. "Have fun, you two. Don't do anything I wouldn't do," which gives you a very wide range of options. They fled, giggling. Garrett waited until the door closed, then crossed the room to Jessa. "You changed," he observed. Valerie insisted. "Is it too much?" "It's perfect." His hand found the small of her back, a touch that felt natural despite the fact that this morning was the first time he'd touched her. "You ready? Where are we going?" "You'll see." He guided her toward the door, then paused. "Actually, before we go." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. Jessa's breath caught. "Garrett, not the proposal. Not yet." He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant necklace, a single diamond on a delicate platinum chain. "I bought this at lunch. I wanted you to have something from me that you chose consciously, if you want it." Jessa looked at the necklace, then at Garrett, who was watching her with an expression that was almost nervous. "Turn around," she said softly. Garrett fastened the necklace, his fingers brushing the back of her neck and sending shivers down her spine. "There," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "Now everyone will know you're taken. The ring wasn't enough. The ring is practical. This is—" He trailed off, searching for words. "This is me wanting to give you something beautiful just because I can." Jessa turned to face him, touching the diamond at her throat. "Thank you." "You're welcome." He offered his arm. "Shall we? I have a table reserved for 7 and I'd like to take the scenic route." They took the elevator down together and Jessa was acutely aware of the way Garrett kept glancing at her, like he was memorizing her appearance. "You're staring," she said. "I'm appreciating," he corrected. "There's a difference." The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and Jessa immediately understood why Kim had been checking her phone so obsessively. There were at least 20 employees in the lobby who had clearly found reasons to be there at exactly 6 o'clock on a Monday evening. They all turned to look when Jessa and Garrett emerged, and every single one of them smiled. "Have a good evening, Mr. Stone, Mrs. Stone," the security guard called out. A few people actually applauded. Garrett handled it with his usual composure, nodding politely as he guided Jessa through the lobby. But she caught the slight curve of his lips, the hint of satisfaction in his expression. He was proud to be seen with her, actually proud. Outside, instead of the Tesla, there was a different car waiting, a sleek silver Audi that Jessa had never seen before. "I thought you drove a Tesla," she said, as Garrett opened the door for her. "I do. This is your car." Jessa stopped halfway into the vehicle. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your car, I bought it this afternoon." He said it like he was discussing office supplies, not a luxury vehicle that probably cost more than she made in a year. "You can't keep taking ride shares everywhere. It's impractical." "Garrett, you can't just buy me a car." "Why not? We're married. What's mine is yours, including the garage space." He waited patiently for her to sit, then closed the door and walked around to the driver's side. Jessa sat in the passenger seat of her new car, touching the leather interior and feeling like she'd stepped into an alternate universe. "This is insane," she said when Garrett got in. "This is practical," he countered, starting the engine. "You live in my building now. We have 2 parking spots. It made sense." "You bought me a car because it made sense?" "I bought you a car because I want you to be safe and comfortable, and because I like the idea of knowing you have reliable transportation." He pulled out of the parking garage. "Also, because I'm obscenely wealthy and I want to spoil my wife." "Is that allowed?" Jessa didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You're impossible. I'm generous." Garrett corrected with a smile. There's a difference. They drove through Seattle as the sun started setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Garrett took them along the waterfront, past Pike Place Market, through downtown. Are you going to tell me where we're going? Jessa asked. Canlis, I reserved the private dining room. Jessa's jaw dropped. Canlis? Garrett, that place is impossible to get into. People wait months for reservations. I know the owner, Garrett said simply. And I may have mentioned that I was taking my wife on our first date and needed everything to be perfect. Our first date, Jessa repeated. We're married, and this is our first date. Backwards, remember? We're doing everything backwards. He glanced at her and his expression was warm. But I don't care about the order. I just care about getting it right. Canlis was everything Jessa had heard it was. Elegant without being stuffy, romantic without being over the top. The private dining room Garrett had reserved overlooked the city lights and the sound, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a table set for two. Mr. Stone, the maitre d' greeted them. Everything is prepared as requested. Your sommelier will be with you shortly. They were seated, and Jessa took in the view, the candles, the single rose in a vase on the table. You went all out, she said. You deserve all out, Garrett replied. You deserve someone taking the time to do this properly. Even if we're doing it after the wedding instead of before. A sommelier appeared with a wine list, and Garrett ordered in French. Jessa didn't speak French, but she recognized the tone of someone who knew exactly what they wanted. When they were alone again, Garrett reached across the table and took her hand. I want to know everything, he said. The things I didn't ask on Saturday night because we were too busy being impulsive. Your favorite movie. What you wanted to be when you were 8. Why you chose data analysis when you clearly have the people skills to do anything. That's a long list of questions, Jessa said. We have all night. I cleared my schedule for tomorrow morning too. You cleared your schedule? Garrett Stone, workaholic CEO, cleared his schedule? For you, I'd clear my entire calendar. He said it simply, like it was obvious. Start with the easy one. Favorite movie. The Princess Bride, Jessa said. I've seen it probably 50 times. Never seen it. What? How have you never? Okay, we're fixing that this week. We're watching it. Garrett smiled. Deal. What did you want to be when you were 8? A veterinarian. Until I realized veterinarians have to deal with sick animals. And then I decided I wanted to be a teacher instead. Until I realized teachers have to grade papers. Jessa laughed. I was very concerned with the practical downsides of every profession. You were practical even as a child. I was realistic. There's a difference. She squeezed his hand. What about you? What did you want to be? An astronaut. I was obsessed with space, with the idea of exploring somewhere no one had been before. Garrett's expression turned wistful. I used to build model rockets in my garage and calculate trajectories. That's adorable. That's nerdy, he corrected. I was a very nerdy kid. You're still nerdy. You just hide it under expensive suits and CEO authority. Maybe, Garrett conceded. But only you get to see that side now. The wine arrived and they toasted to backwards dating and bad drunk decisions with good outcomes. The food was extraordinary. Course after course of perfectly prepared dishes that Jessa couldn't have pronounced if she tried. And through it all, they talked. Garrett told her about starting his company in his 20s, about nearly going bankrupt twice, about the first employee he ever hired who was still with the company. Jessa told him about growing up in Minnesota, about her parents who thought she was crazy for moving across the country, about her younger brother who was getting married next summer. You'll need a +1, Garrett observed. I have a +1. He's sitting across from me wearing a ring that matches mine. Your family knows you're married? Jessa winced. Not yet. I was going to call them tonight, but then everything got crazy, and I figured I'd wait until I understood what was happening before trying to explain it to my mother. What will you tell them? The truth. That I met someone amazing, made a spontaneous decision, and I'm happy. She looked at him. Because I am happy, Garrett. This is weird and backwards and probably going to cause all sorts of complications, but I'm happy. Good, Garrett said softly. Because I'm happy too. For the first time in years, I'm actually happy. They finished dinner as the city lights sparkled below them, and Jessa felt like she was in a dream. A strange, wonderful dream, where the Ice King turned out to be warm and romantic and hers. When the plates were cleared and they were alone with coffee and dessert, Garrett stood up. "What are you doing?" Jessa asked. "What I should have done sober," Garrett said. He came around to her side of the table and, to Jessa's complete shock, got down on one knee. "Garrett, let me do this right," he said quietly. He pulled out a small velvet box, different from the one with the necklace, and opened it to reveal a ring that made Jessa's breath catch. It was stunning. A single diamond, elegant and timeless, in a platinum setting that matched her wedding band perfectly. "Jessa Crane," Garrett began, and his voice was steady, but his eyes were intense. "I've spent 3 years watching you be brilliant and kind and extraordinary. I've spent 18 months wanting you and telling myself I couldn't have you. And I spent one night finally being honest about what I wanted, only to have you not remember it." Jessa felt tears prick her eyes. "So I'm asking you now, sober, in front of witnesses." He gestured to the window, where the maitre d' and sommelier were definitely watching from a respectful distance. "With a ring I chose specifically for you, and with the full knowledge of what I'm asking, will you marry me? Again? Properly this time? With you actually remembering saying yes?" Jessa was crying now, not even trying to hide it. "We're already married," she managed. "I know, but I want you to choose it consciously. I want you to say yes while looking at me, not at a sketchy chapel at 3 in the morning. I want this to be a memory you keep, not one I have to tell you about." He smiled, and it was vulnerable and hopeful and so unlike the CEO she'd worked with for 3 years. "So what do you say, Jessa? Will you be my wife? Not by accident, but on purpose?" Jessa looked at the ring, at Garrett kneeling in front of her, at the life he was offering her. Complicated and public and absolutely nothing like what she'd planned, and she realized she didn't care about plans anymore. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you. Again, on purpose this time." Garrett's smile could have lit up the entire restaurant. He slipped the engagement ring onto her finger, right above the wedding band, and then he was standing, pulling her up with him, and kissing her like they weren't in a public restaurant with people watching. Jessa kissed him back, tasting coffee and chocolate and joy, and somewhere in the background she heard applause. When they pulled apart, Garrett rested his forehead against hers. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For saying yes. Both times. For taking a chance on someone everyone calls the Ice King. For making me want to be something more than just work and profit margins." "You're welcome," Jessa said. "And for the record, I've never thought you were cold. Intense, yes. Focused, definitely. But never cold. What did you think I was?" Jessa smiled. "I thought you were someone worth taking a risk on. Turns out drunk me was right." Garrett laughed and kissed her again, softer this time. "Take me home," Jessa said when they parted. "To our home. Show me where you put my plant." "Our home," Garrett corrected, and Jessa loved the way he said it. "Our life. Starting now." He kept his arm around her as they left the restaurant, past the staff who were all smiling, into the cool Seattle night. "One question," Jessa said as they reached the car. "Anything. Are we going to have a wedding? Like an actual wedding that I remember, with guests and cake and all that?" Garrett opened the car door for her, but before she got in, he cupped her face in his hands. "If you want one, we'll have one. If you want to renew our vows in front of everyone we know, we'll do that. If you want to keep it just between us and move forward, we'll do that too." He kissed her forehead. "Whatever you want, Jessa. This marriage is ours to define." Jessa smiled. "I want people to know. I want a party. I want to celebrate the fact that I married someone incredible, even if I was too drunk to remember it the first time. Then we'll have a party," Garrett promised. "The biggest celebration Seattle has ever seen. But first, I'm taking you home and showing you that your plant is thriving on the east-facing windowsill. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. I'm just getting started, Mrs. Stone. Just getting started." The drive to Garrett's apartment, their apartment, Jessa corrected herself, took 20 minutes through downtown Seattle. They held hands the entire way, and every time Jessa looked down at her rings, plural now, she felt a flutter of disbelief mixed with joy. "You're staring at your hand again," Garrett observed, amusement in his voice. "I have 2 rings now. That feels significant." "It is significant. One is the ring we chose drunk at 3 in the morning. The other is the ring I chose for you while thinking about what would make you smile." He squeezed her hand. "I like the combination." "Me too." Jessa hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." When you bought the engagement ring today, how did you know what I'd like? We've never talked about jewelry or style or any of that." Garrett was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was softer. "I've been paying attention, Jessa, for longer than you know. I noticed you don't wear a lot of jewelry, just small earrings, that watch your parents gave you for graduation. I noticed you prefer simple over flashy, classic over trendy, so I looked for something that would suit you without overwhelming you." "You've been paying attention to my jewelry preferences for 18 months? "I've been paying attention to everything about you for 18 months, Garrett corrected. "It's somewhat embarrassing, actually. Marcus caught me staring at you during a budget meeting once and asked if I was having a stroke." Jessa laughed. "What did you tell him?" "That I was thinking about quarterly projections. He didn't believe me." They pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a building Jessa recognized, one of the newer luxury high-rises in downtown, all glass and steel, and the kind of price tag that made normal people weep. "Top floor," Garrett said as they got in the elevator. "Penthouse. 2 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, office, gym, and a balcony with a view of the Sound. How long have you lived here?" 2 years. I bought it when the company went public and I could finally afford something that wasn't my original studio apartment." He smiled. "That place had a Murphy bed and a kitchen the size of a closet. I lived there for 5 years. I would have liked to see that." "Why?" "Because that was you before all this. Before you were the CEO everyone's afraid of. When you were just Garrett, trying to build something." Jessa leaned against the elevator wall. "I bet you worked crazy hours and lived on takeout and coffee." "Accurate," Garrett admitted, "though I did eventually learn to cook 3 dishes that didn't come from a microwave." 3 whole dishes, impressive. Don't mock my culinary journey, wife. One of those dishes is actually good." The elevator opened directly into the penthouse, and Jessa stepped into a space that was somehow exactly what she expected, and nothing like it at the same time. The main room was open concept. Living room flowing into kitchen, flowing into dining area, with those floor-to-ceiling windows Garrett seemed to favor. The view was spectacular, all city lights and water and stars. But what surprised Jessa was how lived-in it felt. There were books on the coffee table, a blanket draped over the couch, coffee mugs in the sink, running shoes by the door. It wasn't the sterile bachelor pad she'd half expected. It was a home. "This is beautiful," she said. "Thank you." The decorator wanted to do more, but I stopped her after she tried to put abstract art everywhere. "I don't understand abstract art." "What do you understand?" Garrett gestured to the walls, and Jessa realized they were covered in photographs. Not professional ones, candid shots. A woman who must be his sister laughing at a restaurant. A group photo from what looked like the early days of Stone Digital. Everyone young and exhausted and triumphant. The Seattle skyline at sunset. Pike Place Market in the rain. "I understand memories," Garrett said quietly. "Things that actually mean something." Jessa walked closer to study the photos. There was one of Garrett with someone who looked like an older version of him. His father, probably. Both of them holding fishing rods and grinning. Another of a much younger Garrett in front of a white board covered in equations. "That's from college," Garrett said, coming up behind her. "Differential equations, I loved that class." "You were a nerd," Jessa said affectionately. "Still am. I just hide it better now." He rested his hands on her shoulders. "Come on, let me show you where I put your things." The master bedroom was through a door on the left, spacious and minimalist like the rest of the apartment, with a king-sized bed and more of those massive windows. But what caught Jessa's attention was the dresser. Half of it was clearly hers now. Her jewelry box sat on top, a framed photo of her family that usually lived on her desk at work. Her favorite reading lamp. "You really did move my stuff," she said wonderingly. "I told you I would." Garrett opened the closet. "I also made room. That side is yours. I moved some of my things to the other bedroom's closet." Jessa looked at the empty space waiting for her clothes and felt something shift in her chest. He'd made room. Literally carved out space in his life for her. "The bathroom has space for your things too," Garrett continued. "And I put your plant in the living room by the east window. It gets good morning light there. And your books are on the shelf, though I wasn't sure how you organize them, so I just went alphabetically by author." "You alphabetized my books? Was that wrong?" Garrett looked genuinely concerned. "I can reorganize them however you want." Jessa turned to face him fully, and suddenly she was crying again. these happy, overwhelmed tears that she couldn't control. "Hey, hey!" Garrett pulled her into his arms immediately. "What's wrong? Did I overstep? I can move everything back. I just thought..." "Nothing's wrong," Jessa managed through tears. "Everything's right. That's the problem. This is all so right and so fast, and I don't know how to process it." Garrett held her tighter, one hand stroking her hair. "We can slow down. We can take this at whatever pace you need." "I don't want to slow down," Jessa said into his chest. "That's what's scary. I should want to slow down. I should want time to think and adjust and be rational, but I don't. I just want to stay in this moment where everything feels perfect." "Then stay," Garrett said simply. "Stay in this moment. We'll deal with tomorrow when it comes." They stood like that for a long moment, Jessa letting herself be held, Garrett giving her the space to feel whatever she needed to feel. "I'm getting mascara on your shirt," Jessa mumbled. "I have other shirts. Expensive shirts. I have expensive other shirts." Garrett pulled back enough to look at her, using his thumbs to wipe away her tears. "Better? Better." Jessa took a shaky breath. "Sorry, I don't usually fall apart like this." "You're not falling apart. You're processing. There's a difference." He kissed her forehead. "And for what it's worth, I'm processing too. I'm just better at hiding it." "What are you processing?" "The fact that I have someone to come home to now. That there's someone else's things in my space and it doesn't feel like an intrusion. It feels like completion." Garrett smiled. "That I get to wake up next to you tomorrow and every day after that." "Every day? Every day you'll have me," Garrett confirmed. "Which I'm hoping is a very long time." Jessa touched his face, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw. "Show me the rest of the apartment?" "There's not much more to see. Office is through there." He pointed to another door. "Guest room is there. But there's one more thing I want to show you." He led her back through the living room to a sliding glass door she hadn't noticed. It opened onto a balcony that wrapped around the corner of the building, furnished with comfortable chairs and a small table. The view was breathtaking. The entire city spread out below them, Elliott Bay glittering with reflected lights, the sound of distant traffic creating a soft backdrop. "I come out here when I need to think," Garrett said, "or when work gets too loud and I need quiet. It's my favorite part of the apartment." "It's incredible," Jessa breathed. "It's ours now." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood looking out at the city together. "Everything I have is ours now, Jessa. This apartment, the cars, the company shares, all of it. I'm having the paperwork drawn up this week to add your name to everything." Jessa turned in his arms. "Garrett, you don't have to." "I want to. We're married. What's mine is yours. Legally, financially, in every way that matters." His expression was serious. "I meant my vows, Jessa. Even if I don't remember saying them, I meant them. For better or worse, richer or poorer, all of it." "We should probably figure out what our vows actually were," Jessa said, "since neither of us remembers them clearly." "I have the video," Garrett admitted. "The chapel filmed the ceremony. It's actually rather sweet, if you ignore how drunk we clearly are." "Can we watch it?" "Now? Now. I want to see it. I want to see what made me say yes to you at 3 in the morning. Garrett studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, but fair warning, I cry during my vows. Very out of character for the Ice King." "You cried?" "Apparently I'm an emotional drunk." He took her hand and led her back inside. "Come on, let's see how we got married." They settled on the couch together, Garrett pulling out his phone and connecting it to the TV. The video started with shaky footage of the chapel, which was exactly as tacky as Jessa had imagined, complete with plastic flowers and a neon sign. Then the camera focused on them. Drunk Jessa was radiant in her green dress, holding those grocery store roses like they were priceless. Drunk Garrett had his tie loosened, and his sleeves rolled up, and he was looking at her like she hung the moon. "Dearly beloved," the officiant began in a voice that suggested this was his 50th wedding of the night, "we are gathered here to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." "This is surreal," present-day Jessa whispered. "Just wait," Garrett murmured. The ceremony was short. Standard vows, exchange of rings, the usual. But when it came time for Garrett to say, "I do," he paused. "Actually," drunk Garrett said on the video, swaying slightly, "can I say something real quick?" The officiant looked resigned. "Sure, buddy." Drunk Garrett turned to drunk Jessa, taking both her hands. Jessa Crane, you are the smartest, funniest, most beautiful person I have ever met. You make me want to be better. Not better at business or better at making money, but better as a person. You make me remember why I started this company in the first place, because I wanted to build something that mattered. And you matter, Jessa. You matter so much. Present-day Jessa felt fresh tears starting. On the video, drunk Jessa was crying too. Garrett, you're making me cry. Good tears? The best tears. Drunk Jessa laughed. You matter too, you know. You're not just the Ice King everyone thinks you are. You're warm and funny and you remember my coffee order even though you pretend you don't pay attention to things like that. I pay attention to everything about you, drunk Garrett said, and present-day Garrett squeezed present-day Jessa's hand. I know, drunk Jessa said. That's why I'm saying yes. Not because it's logical or makes sense, but because you see me, really see me. And I see you too. Even the nerdy parts? Especially the nerdy parts. Drunk Garrett kissed her then before the officiant could finish the ceremony, and the old man sighed. I pronounce you husband and wife, I guess, since you're already kissing. The video showed them laughing, crying, kissing again, then signing papers, then more kissing. The entire thing was chaotic and sweet and utterly them. When the video ended, Jessa was openly crying on the couch. That was beautiful, she said. That was us too drunk to stand straight, Garrett corrected, but he was smiling. No, it was us being honest. More honest than we'd ever been sober. Jessa turned to face him. You told me I mattered. You told me I made you want to be better. Do you still feel that way? More than ever, Garrett said immediately. Sober me is just better at hiding emotions. Drunk me apparently has no filter. I like no filter you. He doesn't show up very often. Maybe he should show up more often. Jessa shifted closer. I meant what I said too, you know, about you not being just the Ice King. You're so much more than that, Garrett. I see all of it. What do you see? Jessa took a moment to gather her thoughts. I see someone who works crazy hours because he cares about the people who depend on him for their livelihoods. I see someone who remembers everyone's names and asks about their families, even though he pretends to be all business. I see someone who builds model rockets and loves differential equations and keeps photos of people he loves on every wall. Garrett's expression softened. You really do see me. Of course I do. That's why drunk me said yes. Jessa smiled. Drunk me was smarter than sober me has been giving her credit for. So you don't regret it? Any of it? Not even a little bit. Jessa kissed him softly. Best decision drunk me ever made. Garrett pulled her closer, deepening the kiss, and Jessa felt the last of her doubts melt away. This was right. This was where she was supposed to be. When they broke apart, both slightly breathless, Garrett rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me tonight, he said quietly. Really stay. Not because you're drunk, not because it's convenient, but because you want to. I want to, Jessa said. I want to wake up here tomorrow. I want to see my plant in the morning light. I want to watch you make one of your 3 famous dishes for breakfast. Ambitious, my breakfast dish is just scrambled eggs. Perfect. I love scrambled eggs. She kissed him again. Take me to bed, husband. Garrett smiled against her lips. As my wife wishes. He stood, pulling her up with him and led her to the bedroom. But instead of the rushed, urgent energy Jessa half expected, Garrett was gentle, careful, like he was memorizing every moment. No pressure, he murmured as they stood beside the bed. We can just sleep. We have all the time in the world. I know, Jessa said, but I don't want to just sleep. I want to remember this. I want tomorrow morning to be the first time I wake up as your wife and actually remember how I got there. Garrett cupped her face in his hands. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. So Garrett kissed her, deep and slow and full of promise, and Jessa kissed him back with everything she had. And when they finally fell asleep hours later, tangled together in Garrett's massive bed, Jessa's last thought before drifting off was that drunk her had made the right call. Sometimes the best decisions were the ones you made with your heart instead of your head. Sometimes you had to take a leap of faith. And sometimes, just sometimes, you woke up married to exactly the right person, even if you couldn't remember saying I do. 3 weeks later, Jessa stood in front of the mirror in what used to be just Garrett's bedroom and was now very much theirs, adjusting the cream-colored dress she'd chosen for the party. Not a wedding dress. She'd already worn one of those, even if she couldn't remember it, but something elegant and celebration-worthy, Something that said, yes, we're doing this backwards, and we're doing it perfectly. You look beautiful, Garrett said from the doorway, already dressed in a dark blue suit that made his gray eyes look almost silver. You're biased. I'm honest. He crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her from behind, both of them looking at their reflection. Ready for this? Ready for 200 people to celebrate our marriage? Absolutely not. Jessa leaned back against him. But let's do it anyway. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind. Jessa had officially moved the rest of her things into the penthouse. They'd told her parents, who'd been shocked and then delighted, and then insisted on flying out to meet Garrett immediately. They'd told his sister, who'd laughed for 10 straight minutes, and then demanded to be the maid of honor at the vow renewal they were definitely having. And they'd planned this party, a celebration at the Space Needle's private event space, with everyone from Stone Digital invited plus family and friends. Your parents are going to give me the intimidating father speech again, aren't they? Garrett asked. Probably. Dad's been practicing. Jessa turned in his arms. But he likes you. Mom definitely likes you. She texted me yesterday to say you're such a gentleman and so well-mannered. I'm terrified of your mother. Everyone's terrified of my mother. She's a retired principal. Intimidation is her superpower. Jessa straightened his tie. Besides, you're the Ice King. You can handle one retired educator from Minnesota. The Ice King melts around his wife, Garrett said, kissing her softly. Complete structural failure. Good thing I like you melted. They arrived at the Space Needle an hour before the party started, wanting time to make sure everything was perfect. The event coordinator had outdone herself. The space was decorated with thousands of tiny lights, elegant floral arrangements, and a stunning view of Seattle at sunset. This is incredible, Jessa breathed. Only the best for Mrs. Stone. Garrett squeezed her hand. Come on, let's do a final check before the chaos begins. The chaos began exactly on time. Valerie arrived first, wearing a stunning red dress and immediately pulling Jessa into a hug. You look gorgeous. Garrett looks terrified. Everything is perfect. I'm not terrified, Garrett protested. You're about to stand in front of everyone you know and basically admit you got drunk married. You're at least a little terrified. Valerie grinned. But don't worry, everyone thinks it's romantic. We took a poll. You took a poll? Company-wide survey. 92% approval rating for your marriage. The 8% who disapproved were mad they weren't invited to the original ceremony. Marcus and Todd arrived next, both wearing suits and matching grins. The Ice King is having a party, Marcus announced. I never thought I'd see the day. I have parties, Garrett said defensively. You have company events with open bars. This is different. This is personal. Todd clapped him on the shoulder. We're proud of you, man. You finally figured out there's more to life than quarterly reports. I knew that. You knew it theoretically. Now you know it practically. Marcus turned to Jessa. Thank you for humanizing our CEO. He's been almost pleasant to work with lately. Almost pleasant. Garrett raised an eyebrow. You smiled in a meeting yesterday. Unprompted. It was unsettling. But Marcus was smiling too. Seriously though, you two are good together. Everyone can see it. More people arrived. Colleagues from Stone Digital. Garrett's sister Claire, who immediately swept Jessa into a hug and started showing her embarrassing childhood photos of Garrett. Jessa's parents, who'd flown in 2 days ago and hadn't stopped smiling since. By 7 o'clock, the space was packed with 200 people, all of them there to celebrate a marriage that had started as a drunken impulse and had somehow become the best decision either Jessa or Garrett had ever made. The DJ, because of course there was a DJ, called for everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have you gather around. The happy couple has a few words they'd like to share. Jessa and Garrett stood together in front of the massive windows, the Seattle skyline glittering behind them. Garrett took the microphone first. Thank you all for coming, he began, his voice carrying across the room. I know this is unconventional. Most people have the party before the marriage, not after. But then again, Jessa and I have never been particularly conventional. Laughter rippled through the crowd. 3 weeks ago, I woke up married to the most incredible woman I've ever met. And I have to be honest, I panicked. Not because I regretted it, but because I couldn't believe I'd actually had the courage to do something that impulsive, that honest, that right. He turned to look at Jessa, and his expression softened. Jessa makes me better. Not better at business, though she does that too. Better as a person. She makes me laugh. She makes me think. She makes me want to leave the office before midnight occasionally. More laughter. She sees past the CEO, past the reputation, past the walls I've built, and she likes what she finds there. And that's terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. Jessa felt tears starting and tried to blink them back. So, yes, we got married drunk at 3 in the morning in a chapel that had plastic flowers and a neon sign. But I meant every word of those vows. And I'll mean them even more tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day for the rest of my life. Garrett held out his hand to Jessa. Thank you all for celebrating with us. And thank you, Jessa, for saying yes, twice. The room erupted in applause, and Jessa took the microphone with shaking hands. So, she began, fun fact, I don't actually remember getting married. 4 espresso martinis will do that to you. The crowd laughed, and Jessa relaxed slightly. But what I do remember is the moment I realized I was in love with Garrett Stone. It was about 18 months ago. We were in a board meeting, and someone was questioning his data analysis, which was perfect, by the way. It's always perfect. And instead of getting defensive, he pulled up 2 years of financial records from memory and walked them through every single number until they understood. And I thought, this man is brilliant. This man cares. This man is worth taking a risk on. She looked at Garrett, who was watching her with that expression that still made her heart skip. So when drunk me decided to marry him at 3 in the morning, sober me realized drunk me was actually incredibly smart, because Garrett is worth every risk, every raised eyebrow, every moment of chaos. He's kind and funny, and he remembers everyone's coffee orders even though he pretends not to. He cried during our wedding vows. He alphabetizes books for fun. He bought me a car because he wanted me to be safe. And a plant light, Garrett interjected. Don't forget the plant light. And a plant light, Jessa agreed, laughing through tears. Because that's who he is. Someone who notices what you need before you know you need it. Someone who makes space for you in every part of his life. Someone who proposes twice because he wants you to remember saying yes. She turned to face the crowd fully. So thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting us through what must have been the weirdest Monday morning announcement in corporate history. And thank you for understanding that sometimes the best love stories don't follow the rules. Sometimes they start with karaoke and bad decisions and plastic flowers. And that's okay, because it's our story, and I wouldn't change a single thing. The applause was deafening. Garrett pulled her into a kiss that probably lasted longer than was appropriate for a company party, but Jessa didn't care. She was married to this man, in front of everyone they knew, and it was perfect. Speech, speech! Someone started chanting, and Jessa realized it was Garrett's sister. We just gave speeches, Garrett called out. Not you, your sister! Claire pushed forward, taking the microphone. As the maid of honor at the vow renewal we're definitely having. Are we definitely having that? Garrett muttered. I just want to say that I've known Garrett his entire life, and I've never seen him this happy. Never seen him smile this much. Never seen him actually leave work at a reasonable hour. Claire turned to Jessa. Thank you for loving my baby brother, even if he is stubborn and workaholic and occasionally forgets that food is necessary for survival. I don't forget. He made a spreadsheet for your first date, Claire continued. A spreadsheet with talking points and contingency plans. The crowd burst into laughter, and Garrett's face turned red. That was for efficiency, he protested. That was because you're a nerd, Claire countered affectionately. But you're our nerd, and Jessa is perfect for you. So congratulations, you two. May your marriage be full of love, laughter, and significantly fewer spreadsheets. She handed the microphone back and hugged them both. The party continued. Dinner, dancing, toasts from various employees who all had stories about either Garrett being scary or Jessa being wonderful. Jessa's father gave a speech about how he'd been skeptical when his daughter called to say she'd gotten married in Vegas. It was actually Seattle, but the chaos level was similar. But after meeting Garrett, he understood completely. My daughter is brilliant, he said, raising his glass. She makes good decisions. Even when they seem impulsive, they're actually very calculated. And marrying Garrett Stone, best calculation she ever made. Around 10 o'clock, Garrett pulled Jessa onto the dance floor for what the DJ announced was the couple's first dance. We've danced before, Jessa pointed out as Garrett wrapped his arms around her. Not as husband and wife. Not in front of everyone we know. He held her closer. How are you holding up? I'm perfect. This is perfect. Jessa rested her head on his shoulder. Everyone's so happy for us. Because you're easy to be happy for. You're the person who remembers birthdays and asks about people's kids and somehow makes everyone feel valued. Garrett kissed the top of her head. I'm just the guy who's lucky enough to have convinced you to marry him. You didn't have to convince me. I said yes, remember? I remember, even if you don't. I remember the important part, Jessa said. The part where I chose you. The part where you chose me back. The part where we decided to build something together. They swayed to the music, surrounded by people who loved them, in a city that had become home, with a future stretching out ahead of them full of possibility. Can I tell you something? Garrett murmured. Always. That night, our wedding night, I wasn't actually that drunk. Jessa pulled back to look at him. What? I had 3 drinks over 4 hours. I was buzzed, sure, but I knew exactly what I was doing when I proposed. Garrett's expression was serious. I knew it was impulsive. I knew it was crazy, but I also knew it was right. And I knew if I didn't ask you then, sober me would talk myself out of it for another year. So you let me think we were both drunk? You were definitely drunk. I was strategically tipsy. He smiled slightly. I figured if it didn't work out, you could blame it on the alcohol. But if it did work out, which I was hoping it would, then we'd have a good story. Jessa stared at him. Garrett Stone, did you plan our spontaneous drunk wedding? I planned the proposal. The wedding was genuinely spontaneous. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Are you upset? Jessa thought about it. She should probably be upset, but instead she just started laughing. You sneaky, calculating, romantic genius, she said. You knew exactly what you were doing. I knew I wanted you. I knew waiting for the perfect moment meant possibly waiting forever. So I made the moment. Garrett pulled her close again. No regrets? Not a single one. Jessa kissed him softly. Though, for the record, I'm glad at least one of us was thinking clearly. Someone had to fill out the marriage license correctly. You're impossible. I'm yours, Garrett corrected. There's a difference. They danced for another hour, surrounded by the people who mattered most. Valerie cried during her toast. Marcus and Todd performed a truly terrible karaoke duet. Garrett's sister made everyone watch the video from the actual wedding, which got a standing ovation. Around midnight, as the party was winding down, Jessa and Garrett slipped out onto the observation deck. The city spread out below them, quieter now, peaceful. Thank you, Garrett said, pulling her into his arms. For what? For taking a chance on the Ice King, for seeing past the reputation, for being brave enough to say yes to something crazy. He kissed her forehead. For making me believe in more than just work and profit margins. You're welcome. Thank you for proposing drunk. Strategically tipsy. Right. Strategically tipsy. Jessa smiled up at him. And thank you for proposing again sober. And for moving my plant. And for buying me a car. And for making space in your life for someone other than yourself. Best investment I ever made, Garrett said seriously. Better than the company. Better than any deal. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Jessa Stone. Jessa Crane Stone, she corrected. I'm keeping my name too. Hyphenated. Perfect. Jessa Crane Stone. Love of my life. Best decision I ever made. He kissed her deeply. Ready to go home? Our home. Our home, our life, our future. Garrett took her hand. Together. They said goodbye to the remaining guests, collected approximately 50 hugs from various people, and finally made it to the car. Jessa's car, which she was still getting used to driving. I'll drive, Garrett offered. You hate being a passenger. I love being with you more than I hate being a passenger. He opened her door. Get in, wife. Let's go home. The drive home was quiet, peaceful. Jessa held Garrett's hand the entire way, watching the city lights blur past, thinking about how much had changed in 3 weeks. 3 weeks ago, she'd woken up married to her boss with no memory of how it happened. Now she was married to her best friend, her partner, the person who made her laugh and challenged her and loved her completely. What are you thinking about? Garrett asked as they pulled into their building's garage. How lucky I am, Jessa said honestly. How lucky we both are. Luck had nothing to do with it, Garrett said. We made a choice, we chose each other, and we keep choosing each other every day. Every day, Jessa agreed. They rode the elevator up to the penthouse, and when the doors opened, Jessa saw that someone, probably Claire, had scattered rose petals across the floor leading to the bedroom. Subtle, Garrett said dryly. Your sister loves drama. She really does. He picked Jessa up, making her squeal. But she has a point. We should probably follow the rose petals. Garrett Stone, are you carrying me across the threshold? We're already married. I'm 3 weeks late. He kissed her as he carried her through the apartment. But better late than never. He set her down gently in their bedroom, where more rose petals waited and candles had been lit. Your sister is very thorough, Jessa observed. She's been planning this for weeks. I told her it was excessive. She told me to shut up and let her be romantic. Garrett pulled Jessa close. But I'm not complaining. Me neither. Jessa kissed him. Thank you for tonight, for the party, for the celebration, for making this official in front of everyone we love. Thank you for being worth celebrating, Garrett said, for being exactly who you are, for making me want to be better. You're already pretty great. I'm better with you. He started to say something else, then stopped. Actually, I have one more thing. Garrett, you've given me enough. Not a gift, a promise. He took both her hands. I promise to always make space for you. In my calendar, in my home, in my life. I promise to remember your coffee order and your book organization system and when your favorite shows air. I promise to be present, not just physically, but emotionally. And I promise to keep choosing you every single day for the rest of our lives. Jessa felt tears streaming down her face again. That's the best promise anyone's ever made me. Then I'm doing it right. Garrett wiped away her tears. Your turn. What do you promise? Jessa thought about it, about everything they'd been through, everything they'd become. I promise to keep calling you out when you're being too much of a CEO and not enough of a person. I promise to drag you away from work occasionally. I promise to always be honest with you, even when it's hard. And I promise to love you. Not just the successful businessman everyone sees, but the nerdy guy who builds model rockets and cries during wedding vows and alphabetizes books for fun. Deal, Garrett said, his voice rough with emotion. Best deal I've ever made. He kissed her then, deep and thorough and full of promise. And when they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Jessa looked at the rose petals and the candles and the man she'd accidentally married and realized something. There was no such thing as a mistake when it came to love. There were just choices. Brave ones, impulsive ones, honest ones. And choosing Garrett Stone, drunk or sober in a sketchy chapel or an elegant restaurant, by accident or on purpose, was the best choice she'd ever make. I love you, she said, the first time she'd said it sober. Garrett's smile could have lit up the entire city. I love you too, he replied. I've loved you for 18 months. I just finally had the courage to tell you 3 weeks ago at 3 in the morning. Best timing ever, Jessa said. Best decision ever, Garrett corrected. And as they fell into bed together, surrounded by rose petals and candlelight and the promise of forever, Jessa Cranestone realized that sometimes the best love stories were the ones you never saw coming. Sometimes they started with karaoke and too many drinks. Sometimes they involved waking up married with no memory of the ceremony. Sometimes they required proposals twice, once drunk and once sober. But when they were right, they were worth every moment of chaos, every raised eyebrow, every unconventional choice. Because love wasn't about following the rules. It was about finding the person who made you want to break them. And Jessa had found hers. Epilogue. 6 months later, Jessa stood in front of a different mirror, in a different dress. This time an actual wedding dress, simple and elegant and everything she'd dreamed of. Ready? Valerie asked, adjusting Jessa's veil. So ready, Jessa said, meaning it. The vow renewal was happening at a vineyard outside Seattle, with actual planning and invitations and all the things they'd skipped the first time. Both sets of parents were there. Garrett's entire family, all their friends from Stone Digital, everyone who mattered. But when Jessa walked down the aisle and saw Garrett waiting for her, dressed in a tuxedo, looking at her like she was his entire world, she realized something. The ceremony didn't matter. The location didn't matter. The flowers and the photographer and the perfect timing didn't matter. What mattered was the choice, the promise, the forever. Hi, Garrett said when she reached him. Hi, Jessa replied. You look incredible. You look nervous. I am nervous. I cried during the rehearsal. Claire has a betting pool on whether I'll make it through the ceremony without tears. What's your bet? That I won't. Because you're beautiful, and I'm sentimental, and this is the best day of my life. Again, he took her hands. Ready to marry me for the third time? I married you once drunk, once sober over dinner, and now in front of everyone we love. Third time's the charm. The officiant, a real one this time, not someone who looked exhausted at 3 in the morning, began the ceremony. But when it came time for vows, Garrett pulled out a piece of paper and Jessa's heart melted. I know I'm supposed to have these memorized, he said, but I wrote them down because I wanted to get every word right. Jessa, you are my best friend, my partner, my favorite person to argue with about data analysis methods. You make me laugh, you make me think, you make me want to be the person you see when you look at me. Not the Ice King, not the CEO, just Garrett. The guy who loves you more than anything in this world. He took a breath, and yes, there were tears. I promise to always choose you, to always make time for you, to watch The Princess Bride without complaining more than twice, to remember that plants need water, and that spreadsheets aren't appropriate for every situation. And I promise to love you with everything I have, every day, for the rest of our lives, no matter how many times we get married. The crowd laughed through tears, and Jessa took her own paper out. Garrett, 3 weeks after we got married, you told me that sometimes the best decisions are the ones you make with your heart instead of your head. And you were right. My head would have taken years to work up the courage to be with you. My head would have made lists and analyzed risks and probably talked myself out of the best thing that ever happened to me. But my heart knew, and drunk me listened to my heart. More laughter, and Jessa smiled through her own tears. So I promised to keep listening to my heart, to keep taking risks with you, to keep choosing adventure over caution and honesty over perfection. I promised to call you out when you're being too much Ice King and not enough human. I promised to always save you the last dance, and I promised to love you, all of you, for as long as we both shall live, which I'm hoping is a very long time. They exchanged rings, the same ones because why change what already worked, and kissed before the officiant could finish the ceremony. Some things never changed. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant said, laughing. Again. The reception was perfect. The food was excellent. The speeches were touching and funny and slightly embarrassing. And when Garrett and Jessa took the floor for their first dance, third first dance, the DJ played the song that had been playing in the elevator the morning after they got married. Full circle, Garrett murmured. Perfect circle, Jessa corrected. They danced surrounded by everyone they loved, in a vineyard in Seattle, 6 months after an accidental marriage that turned out to be the most right thing either of them had ever done. And when someone asked how they knew they were meant to be together, Jessa just smiled and said, We didn't know, we just decided, and then we decided again, and we'll keep deciding every single day. Because that's what love was, not a feeling you waited for, not a perfect moment that arrived fully formed, but a choice, a promise, a commitment to keep choosing someone, every day, no matter what. And Jessa Crane Stone would choose Garrett Stone every single time, drunk or sober, in a sketchy chapel or an elegant vineyard, at 3 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon, forever. The end.